All right, we're going to go live and we're going to see how this goes. Hi, everybody. Chuck Holton here. Good to see you today. I am coming to you from Guam, still at Guam, and it's about 6 o'clock in the morning. And I just wondered if you have ever heard of the term MAGA communist. Have you ever heard that term, MAGA communist? That's something that's just until recently new to me. But we're going to be talking about MAGA communism today. And before we do that, I wanted to start with the earthquake that happened in Burma and Thailand yesterday. Now, it's a lot of people call Burma Myanmar. I just have to clarify, Burma and Myanmar are the same countries. It's the real name of the country is Burma, at least if you talk to the people who live there. Myanmar is a name that the military dictatorship that runs the country came up with, and words mean things. And so I still call it Burma because the people who live there call it Burma, at least the ones that I hang out with when I'm there. And so Burma it is. Anyway, big earthquake there, 7.8. They say maybe even 8.0 on the Richter scale, depending on who you read. And so far, over 1,600 people known to be dead in, almost all of them in Burma. There were a few in Thailand. The difference between Thailand and Burma is just the lack of building codes. I mean, Burma is a third world country, and Thailand is not. Thailand is a first world country for the most part, and so the difference in building codes, they have very tall skyscrapers in Bangkok that were swaying all around, and there's incredible videos of swimming pools on the rooftop just splashing their water everywhere and pieces of the building falling off. But those buildings, except for one that was under construction that I saw, didn't fall down. But in Burma, a lot of the buildings, especially in Yangon, the big city, did fall down, and a lot of people are trapped under the rubble. Very likely, the death toll will be quite a bit higher when it's all said and done. Now, because I'm a member of the Free Burma Rangers, I'm obviously real tied into Burma, and I've been there in the last year. That our teams, we have many teams across Burma, are in the more remote areas, so they're out in the jungle, and so the people there were not as affected. They certainly felt the earthquake, but they didn't end up getting crushed because they don't have houses to live in because their houses have been destroyed by the Burmese military, and which they're fighting. So that as far as our people go, we didn't have anybody hurt or killed as far as we know so far, but that's just because they've already been hurt and killed by the Burma army over the last 70 years. They've been fighting. Most people don't know that they kill like 10,000 Christians a year in Burma. The Burmese military junta has said they are going to continue to, kill off the Christian hill tribes people until there are none left. The Burma army has one of the largest, one of the very largest militaries in the world for a country that's not at war with anybody. And they get lots of support from the Russians. They get lots of support from the Chinese, kind of backdoor support from the Chinese. But that people don't realize that the reason they're going after these hill tribes is because the hill tribes are by and large Christian. And so that's one of the reasons why the Free Burma Rangers got started and why it continues to this day. Okay, so let's move on to the Middle East. I wanted to talk about the kind of ramping up of airstrikes by the IDF in Israel before I get to the topic of the live, which is the U.S. ramping up airstrikes against Yemen and what that means. But I'll just give you a quick rundown, because I know a lot of people are interested in that. The IDF, or the IAF, Air Force, started dropping bombs on Beirut again over the last 24 hours. And that's because there were some rockets that were fired at Israel out of Lebanon. And so they responded in kind. It says that they took out a drone storage facility, which was operated by Hezbollah's surveillance and explosive drone attacks wing. Like they have a whole wing for explosive drone attacks on Israel. The IDF issued evacuation notices first, then dropped the small knock bombs on the top of the buildings, and then they collapsed the buildings. So we haven't heard if there are any casualties out of that yet. Additionally, the Israelis struck in Huma and Yomar al-Shakif, and there were 2 Syrian workers that were reported killed from that strike. Defense Minister Israel Katz warned Lebanon to enforce the ceasefire or continue to face these harsh retributory strikes. The IDF also reiterated that ongoing strikes are specifically to ensure Israeli security, that they're not going to go back to an October 6th mindset where, a few missiles here and there are not going to get any response. At this point, any rockets or missiles or threat whatsoever from from Lebanon will be responded to by the Israelis. They shelled that. Let's see. After there were 2 rockets that were fired from Lebanon toward Kiryat Shimona. One was intercepted and one never even made it out of Lebanon. It just landed, on the Lebanese side. The IDF, in response, used artillery to shell the launch site. They triangulate that very quickly and send rounds back at the launch site very, very quickly as well. They also then struck over 15 Hezbollah targets that they've been keeping an eye on for some time. Command centers, rocket launchers, and other terrorist infrastructure inside Lebanon. The Lebanese army went into that area, located the rocket launcher, or a rocket launcher, and denied Hezbollah's involvement. So they're saying, well, Hezbollah didn't have anything to do with that. That's just, random people firing rockets. And Israel's like, yeah, we don't care. We're going to strike. We're going to strike at Hezbollah every chance we get. Now, down in Gaza, there's been a little bit of movement on a possible ceasefire agreement that could come into effect maybe as early as tomorrow. Hamas, you've heard about all these protests inside Gaza, and we've kind of wondered whether or not those were even legit. Thank you, Vosk. Wow, my eyes are not working today. I'm from Fresno. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You're coming to Armenia with us. Oh, that's Rob. Okay. Yeah, we're looking forward to that Armenia trip. That's going to be amazing. Folks, make sure you hit the like button, please, and tell YouTube that other people need to be shown this video. That really helps if you just remember to hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell and all that fun stuff. Also, you're going to want to go to chuckholton.com and become a subscriber over there, because we're putting a lot of effort into adding tons of content over there so that it will be sort of your every crisis go-to place for whatever crisis there is on planet Earth. You're going to be able to get information about those over at chuckholton.com. We're working on a significant upgrade over there, so you're going to definitely want to be a part of that. All right, so this ceasefire agreement, make the protests that have been taking place in Gaza. Again, we don't know if those were actually staged or if they were legit or whatever. But Hamas is saying that they're listening to their people. Their people are upset, and we did hear during those protests that the people were upset, not so much that Hamas was still fighting against Israel or that Israel was, bombing Gaza again. Just that they did it before the end of Ramadan because they really wanted to enjoy their Ramadan and get through what they call Eid al-Fitr, which is the end of Ramadan, at which so again, this may all be just theater, right? Hamas may have orchestrated all of that so that they could save face in coming back to the negotiating table. But they're offering to potentially release an American hostage, an American Israeli who's a member of the IDF that they've been. We didn't even know if he was alive for a long time, but they just recently showed proof of life. So they're talking about releasing him and maybe a few others in exchange for a ceasefire over Eid al-Fitr, which I think is tomorrow. So they're going to have to do that soon. It's going to have to make that happen. It bears pointing out that, remember, President Trump said that all hell would break loose on Hamas if they didn't release, especially the American hostages, but he said all hostages. And so Israel is bringing that to fruition. The United States yesterday affirmed our commitment to allowing Israel to do whatever it takes. And there is now very specific talk of actually like resettling uh, parts of Gaza, if not resettling, keeping a permanent military presence there by the IDF. Uh, and the IDF is saying we're the only ones that are going to be able to manage Gaza. But because of these protests that happened in Gaza, Hamas has rounded up and executed a bunch of people. They say a half a dozen. It could have been a lot more than that. We don't know. And it's they didn't say as much, but it's pretty much a foredrawn conclusion that that is completely due to these people protesting. Maybe they did want the protest to happen, but other people joined the protest that weren't authorized to join the protest. Who knows? But either way, however you read this, if you read it like the people in Gaza were angry at Hamas for breaking the ceasefire before the end of Ramadan, or that Hamas is looking for a way to come back to the negotiating table and save face. Either way, people died because of that, and it just again goes to show that Hamas has absolutely zero concern for the people of Palestine. Of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Um, they have no concern whatsoever, and they're happy to sacrifice even their children uh, in order to make points against the Israelis, and just bears repeating. Thank you, Diane. Very kind. Okay, good. I'll send that to the girls in Columbia. I just sent them some yesterday, as a matter of fact. Um, it bears repeating that Hamas loves death, and when they love death, you can't reason with people like that. And so all these people who are protesting inside Israel that are, we need to, just sit down and talk to these people. And we need to, come up, just capitulate, let them just do whatever it takes to get our people back. You cannot reason with unreasonable people, and you shouldn't try. It's a mistake to try. It just does nothing but torture your own populace, and that is not what you want from a government. Um, why is Trump playing into Hitler's hands? I'm going to talk about Turkey in just a little bit, so stay tuned for that, and I'll answer your question, Danny, then. So after targeting these facilities inside Lebanon, And the hostage deal, there are no more anti-Hamas demonstrations yesterday, uh, obviously because they executed the ringleaders of that. And there has been some more unrest in Judea and Samaria. Uh, that is ongoing. It doesn't get a lot of news, but I like to point it out because you need to realize that the fighting is not just going on in Gaza. It's going on all around the Judea, Samaria, Hebron region. And yesterday there was a Israeli citizen who lives there that was attacked by Palestinians as he was transiting through a B zone. And so then people from that guy's village, other Israelis, came down and essentially assaulted a village where the attacker lived and caused some, they had a melee down there. The IDF was called in. They broke it up, arrested a bunch of the Palestinians for rock throwing and things like that. So it's just ongoing. I mean, it's one big reason why they really need to get some training areas for Israelis who are now armed so that they can more easily defend themselves. Okay, now let's turn over to airstrikes in Yemen. Thank you, Lynn. Very kind to you. We'll go to, why is everyone talking about India? I must have missed that. We're not talking about India on this channel. So we won't hear about India if you are going to listen here. Folks, again, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also go to chuckholton.com. And, over there, you can sign up for all sorts of extra goodies. We did a live yesterday from the beach, Gun Beach down there, just actually right off that direction. And that was a real fun live because we found some Japanese artillery pieces. And you can go watch that if you're a member at chuckholton.com. It was really fun. Okay, so I have a big announcement to make, and I'm very excited to do so. We have landed our first sponsor for the Hot Zone. And I'm excited about that because we have had companies reaching out to us for more than a year. Probably 36 different companies have reached out to us for, to try to get us to, advertise their product and allow them to sponsor the podcast. And I've turned all of them down cold. Many of them were Chinese companies, and I don't do business with China. Chinese products or anything like that. I'm not gonna push Chinese junk. And some of them just were not a good fit whatsoever with our audience or with my genre, So we didn't go with that. But there came along one that I actually was like, wow, this is a really good idea. And so I'm gonna play this pre-recorded read of the thing. It's got photos and video of what what I'm going to be talking about, and I'll come back and talk about it in just a second. But it's actually really cool, and it is something that I personally carry everywhere I go when I travel. So check this out. One of the most common questions I get from people when they find out that I travel to hot zones all around the planet is how I stay healthy when I'm in the field. And let me tell you, folks, after 20 plus years of doing this, I've learned that you have to have a backup emergency kit of medicines that you carry with you everywhere if you're going to go abroad like I do. And that way, if things go sideways, you've got something to get you back on track. Now, you can try to order sketchy medicines off of Amazon or off of other companies on the internet, but I would recommend that you stick with a known company that has a good reputation, like the Wellness Company. The Wellness Company has been around for a long time, and they're putting together these specialized kits now for you while you travel that have things like amoxicillin and ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and generic Tamiflu and things like that. And these are things that you get via prescription in the States. And you can do that through the Wellness Company. If you're one of my listeners, you can go to twc.health/hot zone and order your own kits there. And if you put in the code hot zone, you get free shipping and 10% off. So I highly recommend it. This is the kind of medicines that I carry with me when I travel, and you. All right. So I really was kind of pumped to talk to you about that particular product because all of the medicines in there are things that I carry with me when I travel. And they are things that are hard to get in the United States without a prescription. And so they've come up with a way that you can get a hold of TWC and get a prescription for all of these things for yourself personally and carry one of these kits with you in your bag. They're light, they don't take up a lot of space. But man, you know what? If you are on a trip and you get sick, in some of the places I go, that's a very real possibility. You're going to want to have something like that. So I just thought that was pretty cool. twc.health/hot zone. And so somebody's asking, how's my buddy in Burma? That's Dave Eubank and the Free Burma Rangers. They're all fine because they live in a place where there are really no buildings. All the buildings have been bombed by the Burma army. So they're looking for ways to get help into the affected areas. But getting into those areas is difficult for them because those areas are controlled by the Burmese government junta, and they would murder any of our people that went into that area. So the fighting is ongoing in Burma, and this just complicates things that much more. All right, let's talk about U.S. airstrikes in Yemen. Okay, and this is a significant escalation overnight. In the last 24 hours, we've had more than 100 airstrikes by the United States on targets inside Yemen, targeting Houthi infrastructure in Sana'a, Sadr, Al-Jaf, Hudaydah. They hit the Republican Guard of Yemen's command base and likely killed some of their top leaders this time. They also hit some weapons depots. The leaders that were killed were a guy that I'm not even going to bother telling you their names because you're not going to remember it anyway. And they're very hard. Abdul Hakim Al Kiwi, yeah, it's like whatever. This guy was the head of Houthi security and intelligence, and a general that was a Republican Guard commander. There may have been some other senior officials that were killed and potentially some Iranian IRGC officials that may have been killed in these strikes. And they would not admit to that if it happened. But it's very likely that there are Iranian advisors in Yemen. Also, some Russian advisors in Yemen, or that wouldn't be surprising. Okay, I'm not absolutely positive about that, but it wouldn't be surprising. This operation was led by the USS Harry Truman, and they are continuing to counter Houthi threats, but the Houthis continue to fire missiles. And so, again, we're back to this thing, like how many bombs do you have to drop on Yemen to get them to stop? And, you know, I don't know that there is an answer to that. There's not a good answer to that anyway, because I'm learning, I'm here in Guam. We've been touring around the island of Guam. There were two big battles here on Guam in 1941 and 1944 as the Japanese took it from the Americans, and then the Americans took it back from the Japanese. We're going day after tomorrow to the island of Saipan. There was a huge battle there. We're going the next day after that to Tinian, another huge battle there. Iwo Jima was yesterday, and obviously huge battle there. When it comes to Iwo Jima, they shelled Iwo Jima for 74 days with everything they had, hundreds of ships and planes and bombs and everything that they could drop on an island that's the size of my hometown. It's 2 miles wide by 4 miles long. It's tiny. And they bombed that thing for 74 days nonstop with the biggest weapons they could bring to bear. And they basically didn't kill anybody because everybody was underground. Well, I can guarantee you that anybody who's anybody in the Houthi hierarchy is hiding underground now. And we managed to whack some of them yesterday, but there's plenty of Houthis to go around, hundreds of thousands of them, and they will fight to the last man, most likely, because they don't have anything better to do. I mean, they live in Yemen. What else is there to do but fight, And so they're going to be difficult to root out of there. Killing our way out of this problem or bombing our way out of this problem is likely going to take much more than we have available or are willing to expend to do it. The other option is putting troops on the ground. Obviously, nobody wants to do that. We already have a few troops on the ground. I think probably the best idea would be to maybe cut a deal. If I was President Trump, I'd be talking to Saudi Arabia and saying, hey, Saudi Arabia, these people that live next door to you can't have nice things anymore. And so they need to become part of Saudi Arabia. And we will assist if you'd like to make that happen. The Saudis don't get along with the Yemenis at all. And they have had lots of fights before. And since the Saudis are kind of friends of ours, we should perhaps get them involved or try. I don't know if they're willing, but because the Saudis are going to be a little reticent to do anything that's going to make it look like they are helping Israel right now, especially as the fighting goes on in Gaza. But probably the fastest way to end the trouble in Yemen, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be bombing them. We should be bombing them even more than we are. And they're getting there. I mean, they're ramping it up, but it's still not enough. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be bombing them. I'm just saying that the quickest way to actually end this conflict is to pull out all the stops in Gaza and end Hamas for once and for all. And then when the fighting stops in Gaza, then the Houthis are not going to have an excuse anymore to keep shooting things at Israel. And maybe between now and then, the United States can degrade their capabilities to the point where, they aren't as much of a threat. The bigger issue is Iran, and what are we going to do to degrade Iran? We need to hurt Iran very, very much in the pocketbook. Everybody talks about taking out their nuclear weapons facilities. That's great. We should try that as soon as possible, and we likely will. But it is incumbent if you want to stop their support of these proxies all around the Middle East and in the United States. They've got people in the U.S. Then we have to go after Iran directly. And it's like, if you've got these people over here that are consistently just causing problems for the whole world for decades, and they just won't stop. And again, their whole worldview is centered around who they hate and not who they love. That means they shouldn't be able to have nice things. And we should do whatever it takes to take care of that problem, starting with diplomacy, moving on to sanctions and, things like that. And if those things just don't work, then your only option left is kinetic. And then good people around the world doing nothing is cowardice at that point, in my opinion. So we should definitely do that. Question. So we have 1 American alive and 5 hostages in total. 4 passed away. No, there's several Americans left in Gaza, if I understand right. The one that they're offering to release in exchange for a very short ceasefire is an American Israeli IDF soldier who was captured on October 7th. And they are also likely to release some bodies as well. But they're negotiating about that. We might hear about that maybe tomorrow. Today is Saturday for me. I say tomorrow, so day after tomorrow for you, because I'm 14 hours ahead of Eastern time zone. So I always forget it's Saturday. It's 3:30 on Saturday, March 29th on Central Time, and it is 6:30 in the morning on the 30th in the time zone where I am, Guam time. And you can imagine how confusing that is, trying to figure out phone calls and meetings and stuff like that. So now I want to get to the MAGA communism, which I talked about at the very beginning. Can we cut off Yemen's water supply? Those people pretty much don't drink water. They just eat dirt, I think. I mean, we would be considered war criminals for doing that, because you can't weaponize things like that against civilian populations. in order to fight a military conflict, even though all those people are pretty much on board with what is going on. Yeah, we could drop a nuke on them. There's things we could do, but we're not going to do because they are immoral. We could gas Sanaa if we wanted to, but we're not going to do it because it's immoral. And we are limited, self-limited by our own morality, and we can't let that slide. We have to maintain the moral upper hand. And if we lose that, then we become just as bad as the terrorists. Now, that's a fine line to walk, and it's a difficult line to walk. And it's one reason I don't envy our leadership, because, like I said, any civilian death that happens in Gaza or in Yemen is laid right at the feet of Hamas and at the feet of the Houthis and at the feet of Iran. It's not the fault of the United States, even if we're dropping the bombs. It's not the fault of the IDF, even if they're shooting at bad guys or whatever in Gaza. Because if you hide among the civilian populace, then you make that civilian populace a military target, a legit military target. And so if those people get wiped out, it's on you. But it doesn't mean that the United States doesn't have a express responsibility to do whatever we can to minimize that death and suffering among the civilian populace where we can and when we can. It's a fine line to walk, but we got to do it. Now, how many of you have heard of Jackson Hinkle? You guys heard of Jackson Hinkle? Jackson Hinkle is an American political commentator, influencer. He's really just a nobody who's famous for being famous. And there's a strange phenomenon that he is a part of that I've seen a lot across the political spectrum in the United States over the last few years, especially since the beginning of the war in Ukraine. And Jackson Hinkle considers himself a right-wing political commentator, a conservative. He calls himself a Christian, a patriotic American Christian. But he also considers himself to be a communist. And I don't know about you, but where I come from, you can't be a communist and call yourself a patriotic American. That's just, those two things don't go together. He says they do, and he calls it MAGA communism. And this is a natural progression from the kinds of things that we have seen, and I have talked about a lot in the past. Now, what I mean by that is, let me first tell you what Jackson Hinkle has been doing, and then I'll get to this. He spoke at a Jerusalem Day rally in Sana'a, Yemen yesterday. He went to Yemen and spoke at a Houthi rally against Israel and the United States. He's an American. And there's a rally with hundreds of thousands of people. And isn't that cute? Got to get one of those for the grandkids. Spoke at this rally for hundreds of thousands of people, bashing the United States, bashing Israel, saying that Yemenis are the most courageous people on the planet, and encouraging them to continue to fight against the oppression of the Israelis and the fight for the Palestinians. He's also been in Gaza doing the same thing. And we have a policy that we don't target American citizens. The United States does not target American citizens for elimination, no matter where they are on planet Earth or what they're doing. However, this guy might just become collateral damage. I mean, he's in a place that is actively being bombed right now and is, whipping up fervor against the United States. So he is a traitor. There's no question about that. If he ever comes back to the United States, he likely will, definitely should be arrested and charged with treason. But I want to delve a little more into what would cause a guy who calls himself a patriotic American Christian to go to Yemen and praise Allah? And that's what he was doing in this speech yesterday. Uh, what what would bring somebody to that level of depravity that he would go and do that? Well, here's the thing. It started out with him being very staunchly against the war in Ukraine because he was heavily influenced by Russian propaganda, as many people have been. There have been so many Americans who have been just sucked in by this very effective information warfare campaign against our country by Russia. And the ultimate goal of that is to reduce or eliminate support for Ukraine so that Russia can have its way with that country. And you've heard me talk about this many times, that if you believe things like Ukraine was full of Nazis, if you believe things like Vladimir Zelensky was buying yachts and villas all over Europe and stuff like that, you have been a victim of this Russian propaganda campaign, because those stories and many others like them have have been proven to have begun with Russian disinformation units inside Russia, that they specifically targeted Americans and specifically conservative Americans for that disinformation. Jackson Hinkle sucked it up, just hook, line, and sinker, and went on from there to get further and further. We've seen this happen to the likes of, a bunch of people. Who's the black girl commentator? I just spaced on her name. Used to work for Daily Wire, and Candace Owens. Uh, Candace Owens, same thing. Even within our government, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene have spouted a lot of these conspiracy theories that were pushed by Russian propaganda that have been proven to be false. And uh, I mean, I've met Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was a very nice lady, and I agree with her on most things, but she was heavily influenced by these disinformation campaigns. And if you start taking, so then the Russian disinformation campaigns moved into high gear. Yeah, Tucker Carlson's another one that's been just absolutely overcome by these disinformation campaigns. And I believe he's had Jackson Hinkle on his show before. I could be wrong about that. Somebody look that up and see if Tucker Carlson has had Jackson Hinkle on his show. Right now, I would say any American commentator that's had Jackson Hinkle on his show, we're talking like the InfoWars guys, and there's been, Redacted and those kinds of people, maybe even War Room, people like that. Uh, Hang on, Alta, I'll get to your question in just a second. Thank you for that donation. Uh, Very kind of you. I'll get to that in just a second. Uh, but if I would say any place that's had Jackson Hinkle on their show, you should hold in with some measure of, if not contempt, at least suspicion, because if they're going to have somebody like that on their show, unless it was a long time ago before he really went full retard, then it's, you should be able to filter out some of the misinformation just by association, is what I'm saying. So Jackson Hinkle started there, but then uh, when the war started in Israel, then the Russian disinformation campaign kicked into high gear for that war, and because any conflict that involves the United States is going to dilute or divert our attention from the important work of countering Russia in their attacks on Ukraine. So they start pushing this narrative that Israel is a bad guy. Russia was doing that. The same sources that were putting out the disinformation about Ukraine started putting out that same information uh, about Israel. Jackson Hinkle just went right along with that. I have some other colleagues that have just sucked up that disinformation hook, line, and sinker. Strangely enough, there are people who spend a lot of time talking about information warfare. But I mean, this stuff, so much of this stuff is provably false. And this is the danger here, is that you go far enough down that rabbit trail and you start hating on Israel. You start, okay, Israel's the bad guy, Israel's the bad guy, Israel's the bad guy. Well, the next step in that progression is over okay, free speech is one thing, but you cross over the dark side and start saying that the Houthis are the good guys, that Hamas is the good guys. Now you got big, big problems. And that's the problem Jackson Hinkle finds himself in today. So he's turned himself into a self-parodying sideshow. He's kind of irrelevant in terms of, he's not going to sway American policy. He's not going to get Pete Hegseth to turn off the attacks on Yemen or anything like that. But he is hurting America because he's showing just how divided America can be. He's siding with our enemies. So Alta asks, will we send someone out to capture Hinkle and bring him back to the U.S., or will he be arrested if he comes back of his own accord? It isn't out of the realm of possibility for the FBI or the, DEA or somebody like that to go after Hinkle and to bring him back to the United States to face charges. I'm not. We don't know if that's a priority, but surely could be. Um, Tucker is still right on a lot of things, Cal Fortune, and I'm not saying that Tucker is the same as Hinkle. Hinkle is a traitor. I wouldn't call Tucker Carlson a traitor. I would just call him a bad journalist at this point. I used to respect him very highly, but it turns out that it was more his writers at Fox that were that were respectable, that did very good journalism, and he just read it into a camera, because when he got out on his own and did not have that support, perhaps he had other people, or maybe he's writing the stuff himself. He really threw the ball over the fence, and especially with the stuff on Ukraine and even Israel, he has gone way, way, way out of bounds. And it's hard to have respect for the guy, even if he's saying some things that are correct. If he's so wrong on things like Israel and Ukraine, then it's really hard for me, at least, to follow him or encourage him in any way. I beg you to take this moment. Please be honest and respect you. Please don't be a hypocrite. Are you okay with sending your loved ones to fight in the trenches for absolutely nothing? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Michael. And of course, I don't want to to answer your question, frankly, I don't want to send my loved ones to fight for absolutely nothing. Um, I'm not sure what you mean by absolutely nothing, because, I mean, are you talking about Vietnam? Are you talking about Ukraine? What are you talking about? Give me a little more information and I can give you a solid answer. Of course, I don't want my loved ones fighting for absolutely nothing, but nothing that I've been talking about equals absolutely nothing. So there are reasons to go fight sometimes. Sometimes war is the only or best answer, the only good answer anyway. And, there are, look at these, you ask these veterans of Iwo Jima, they lost about as many men on Iwo Jima in 2 months of fighting than the United States lost in Iraq and Afghanistan in 20 years of fighting. They had 71,000 Marines on that island. that's 2 miles wide and 4 miles long. I don't know how you even fit them all on there. And they fought for months and months, and it was brutal. And so many of their, well, I interviewed this nearly 100-year-old World War II veteran the other day, and he broke down in tears describing to me what he went through on the island of Iwo Jima. This is 80 years later, and it was like he was there. It was like it was yesterday. He was sobbing. I mean, he literally had to go to the hospital after our interview. Okay, and I felt terrible. I couldn't stop him. I wanted to stop the interview and just like, whoa, whoa, and he wouldn't let me stop because he wanted to get all that off his chest. And you ask that guy, is that fighting in the trenches for absolutely nothing? They conservatively estimate that the men who died on Iwo Jima, the 6,000 plus guys who died there, saved upwards of 250,000 lives in the long run. There's no way to know for sure, but that they saved many, many lives. Now, if you ask any of those guys whether it was worth it, those guys will say it was a hell of a fight, but it was worth it. And I've heard that from soldiers throughout my career. There certainly are fights that are not worth it. And we should have a commander in chief who is very careful about sending troops into harm's way. I believe we have that guy as our commander in chief today. And I'm grateful. Our uh, our president should not be the guy who rushes to military violence right off the bat. He should be the calm adult voice in the room that's working on diplomacy, that's working on, making deals, working on economic stuff. But if it's time to use military force, he should be willing to do it. And I think we have that guy in the White House today. How's Frank doing? He's much better. He was back. I don't know if he was able to go to Iwo Jima because the doctors were very concerned about him. Of course, Iwo Jima's a several-hour flight away from a hospital. There's no hospital on Iwo Jima. And so if he had another episode out there, if he had some kind of health issue, they didn't want to send him out there. They didn't want to take that chance. Personally, if I was Frank, I'd be like, I'm 98. What do I care? And just like, go anyway. Kind of like the 91-year-old guy that got married to a 27-year-old, supermodel, and this Texas billionaire, 91 years old, and the newspaper reporter was there interviewing him and was like, so you guys you're I mean, obviously she's quite a bit younger than you. I mean, what are you concerned at all? I mean, is it with all due respect, you're 91. Are you concerned at all about the honeymoon? I mean, it could be dangerous. And the 91-year-old billionaire said, well, if she dies, she dies. That's a joke my dad used to say, which I always thought was pretty funny. My dad was a Baptist minister. After Jackson Hinkle's speech, the crowd that he was speaking to chanted death to America, death to Israel, and victory for Islam. Maybe they were chanting that, or maybe they were just reading their flag, because that's literally what's printed on the flag in Yemen. Although on the Houthi flag anyway, that's what's printed on their flag. Okay, passive power brokers. I'm going to ask you not to post things in all caps, even if they are important in your mind, because then they look like questions and they distract me from what I'm trying to say here. Where'd you get your sense of humor? Mom or dad? Definitely from my dad. And my grandfather both had dry sense of humor. And yeah, so again, passive power brokers, please stop posting in all caps. That if you don't have a question, then don't do that. Chuck, are there any Chinese warships in the waters around Guam? We had 3 of them circling Australia a while back, doing live firing and scat. Not that I know of. There are a few ships offshore, but they're cargo ships, and there are American Navy ships, of course, in the naval base here, but I haven't seen any Chinese ships offshore. All right, so ask if you have any questions, ask them now. I'm gonna give you just about 60 seconds to put your questions up, and I'm kind of scrolling back through here to see if there are any other questions. Where does India stand? They're Russian partners, but tied to the U.S. strategically. They seem to be sitting on the sidelines. That's a very good analysis, Phoenix Design guy. India, it wants to be friends with Russia and China. They want to be part of that BRICS alliance. And their current administration is not very friendly to the United States or Americans, but they need America badly because it's a big part of their, call centers are a big part of their economy. So there's that. Okay, I'm just scrolling back through here a little more, see if we've missed any other questions. Can you repost the wellness link on your locals page? Yes, it will be in the description of this video. As a matter of fact, I will put it in the chat right now. It's twc.health/hot zone. And code for the discount is hot zone. So there it is in the chat. And folks, I actually feel pretty good about accepting TWC as a sponsor. I'm going to be doing some more reads for them in the coming days. There's some other good products they have. A lot of people have no idea how they could possibly be infected with parasites. They're just living with parasites and don't even know it. And they have another product I'm going to be reading about shortly that is there to help you rid yourself of parasites. It's safe. It's been used all over the world. I've used it. I've helped other people use it. It's very effective for ridding you of parasites. And it's amazing how your brain fog clears up when you actually get all of the nutrition that you're eating because you're not feeding the parasites. Why is Trump playing into Erdogan's hands? Okay, I'm going to end with this. Have I heard about Somalia offering U.S. 2 air bases? No, I haven't. That might have happened. I just didn't hear about it. Thank you, Lynn. Very kind. Thank you for that. Is Egypt still massing troops on the border with Israel? Not that I know of. Could we blockade Yemen? Yeah, we could, but Yemenis don't need much. And again, that would be punishing the people, and so there's that kind of moral quandary there. Why does America let Yemenis in? They have been under the Biden administration. I don't think they are under the Trump administration for sure. And Yemenis are not getting into the United States legally right now. Question: do you still believe we are in the beginnings of World War III? Yes, I do. This is definitely World War III. And it's just not going to look like World War II. A few years ago, they said volcano erupted anyway. Wondering about that at Iwo Jima. Last year, they were unable to do the tour to Iwo Jima this time of year because there was volcanic eruptions there. And but they were able to go yesterday. So proper garments. Okay, passive power brokers. I asked you multiple times, so I'm going to have to put you in timeout because you keep typing in all caps. Chuck, do you think President Trump has plans to take USA out of the UN? Well, they've talked about it. Elise Stefanik will stay in Congress. Thoughts on a replacement? I don't know about that. Question: is it true that Americans are being told to leave Syria because of all the upheaval? Americans have been told to leave Syria for a long time. Yes, I'm going to Syria in about 2 weeks, but most Americans are leaving Syria. Any news on soldiers in Lithuania in the swamp? Thanks for asking. I haven't got to Turkey yet. I will. Just hang on a second. I'll get to Turkey. As of this morning, they have not found those 4 soldiers' bodies. They have not been able to recover the 70-ton vehicle that went into the swamp. It's now sitting in 25 feet of water. It's covered with a gelatinous muck that even the divers cannot get through, so they cannot reach the vehicle. They're having to literally drain the entire swamp to dig these guys out. And that was as of about an hour ago when I checked last time. So they have not, the United States military is saying we are not declaring these guys dead because we haven't definitively proven that they are in that vehicle that's sunk in the mud. For all intents and purposes, 99% chance that they're in that vehicle and they drowned in that thing. But we're not going to announce that until we can confirm it, and that makes sense. That's what you would want the military to do. Now let's talk about Turkey real quick, and we'll get out of here. Erdogan is making deals with Syria, the HTS government, which he supported as they overthrew Bashar al-Assad. And he's now making deals to take over ground in Syria and put in a couple of airfields, a couple of Turkish air bases inside Syria. This is a real problem. And there's another problem that Turkey has been slated to receive F-35 fighter jets for some time. And that has been put on hold, but it has not been canceled. And so if the Turks are able to get hold of F-35 technology and they have air bases inside Syria, that would put them within striking distance of Israel. And, they have been very aggressive, very hostile toward Israel throughout this war. Erdogan has threatened to invade Israel with his troops. He has threatened to attack Israel. And so if they have American F-35 stealth technology, this is going to be this would potentially set up a battle between 2 powers that have American technology, and we do not want to see that. That is not what I mean. We have to be very careful about that, and it would be mind-boggling if the Trump administration actually allowed these guys to allowed Erdogan to get F-35 technology. It'd be very, very bad. Will the president break away from Turkey? Well, I mean, there's been a lot of protests in Turkey over the jailing of the mayor of Istanbul, and there's a lot of calls for Erdogan to step down. He's not stepping down. He's cracking down and is, shooting protesters and things like that. He has a pretty tight grip on the military and police in Turkey, and so it's not likely that he'll be overthrown by this. Fletch is asking, how is Turkey still allowed to be a NATO country? That's a good question that I've been asking for a long time. When Turkey went full Muslim Brotherhood, they should have been kicked out of kicked out of NATO, and it diminishes NATO to have Turkey as a part of NATO in many ways. Now, President Trump does not have the ability to get Turkey out of NATO himself. I mean, to just unilaterally say we're kicking Turkey out of NATO. But he could essentially make Turkey irrelevant in NATO, and all he would have to do would be to forbid any U.S. troops, any U.S. Government officials, anybody from the U.S. at all, from having anything to do with the Turkish government. And because we do joint trainings as NATO partners with Turkey, we do, we have bases in Turkey. If we could figure out a way to close down those bases and to just forbid there will never be any more joint anything between the United States and Turkey. Turkey would be essentially sidelined in NATO, whether or not they actually got kicked out. Now, that's more complicated than it sounds because we still have American nukes in Turkey at Incirlik Air Base, and American nukes in Turkey would be very hard to remove. Turkey does not want us to remove them. They could potentially cause a lot of trouble for the United States if we try to remove them. They could make it very difficult for us to remove them because these are not like you don't put them in a suitcase. These nukes are they wouldn't be possible to be gotten out of there secretly because they're the size of a Suburban, and there's a bunch of them. And so, I mean, they're big. They're very big. It might be better if we tried to just figure out a way to disable them, but if we and then just, you know, destroy that stuff as best we can and leave it behind. The problem is we would be leaving behind American secret, top secret technology that then Turkey, Russia, China, Iran would all be able to get their hands on. So other than sending in 5 brigades of Marines or something, and actually invading Turkey in order to get our nukes out of there, it's going to be really, really tough for us to do so. Your thoughts on the Russians buzzing very close to the USS Carl Vinson? Yeah, they've been aggressive towards U.S. shipping, U.S. naval ships. They're brazenly surveilling us, flying over with electronic warfare airplanes and things like that. And it's something that the United States needs to take a much harder stance on it. You know, it's crazy. At one side, the United States has taken this tough stance against the Yemenis and tough stance against Iran. And on the other side, we're like capitulating to Russia over stuff that we don't even need to in Ukraine. And we're trying to bring Russia and Ukraine to the negotiating table. Ukraine says, we're there, we'll do it. We're happy to negotiate. Russia's like, we'll negotiate as soon as Ukraine loses the war. And all of all the things that they require before they will agree to a ceasefire are things that are non-starters. Like everybody has to stop supporting Ukraine. Nobody can support Ukraine anymore. And that essentially is Ukraine has to lose. So it's crazy that we're even considering negotiations with Russia when they are being aggressive, literally aggressive toward us, not just in terms of flying spy planes over our aircraft carriers, but in terms of the kind of asymmetric warfare that they're engaging in across Europe and in the United States as well. I really believe they are. Now, I'm going to end on this just to finish up with Jackson Hinkle. American communism, this MAGA communism that he's espousing, is the natural endpoint of the direction that many people are going on the conservative side of the aisle in the United States. And they would say it's because they are anti-globalist. And so if anti-globalist, a lot of people, you know, what does that exactly mean? We know globalism is something that leftists talk about, that leftists like. So if leftists like globalism, then we don't like globalism, and that's fine. But I think we need to be careful, this is my warning, to conflate globalism with capitalism. Because for decades, generations, the United States has been a bastion of freedom and democracy around the world. We have assisted and supported nations to become more democratic, to become more free, to have more liberty, right? And by and large, Europe is Europe today, the Europe that we see today, because of our efforts. Japan is the peaceable country we see today because of our efforts. There are many countries around them. Panama is the country we see today because of our efforts to extend freedom and democracy around the globe. And leftists pervert everything. They pervert everything natural, normal, into something unnatural and abnormal. And they have perverted that push for freedom and democracy into a push for leftism, for communism, for Marxism, for the exact opposite. But they're using the same vehicle. And by using the same vehicle, they're confusing, intentionally so, a lot of Americans. And a lot of Americans are starting to dribble over from, you know, they no longer see the United States as a bastion of freedom and democracy. They see the United States as a proponent of leftist perversion. And in many ways, under the Biden administration, under the Obama administration, we were becoming that country. We were becoming a bastion of perversion and depravity. And I think it's time for our country. We have a chance now for President Trump to steer us back in the direction of freedom and democracy. We need to do that, but we need to do it without shooting the uh, the victims. Okay, the people of Europe are our allies. The people of Japan are our allies. The people in Latin America are our allies. And we want to keep them our allies. We want to keep them that, because if they're not our allies, they're going to need allies, and they'll go to our adversaries, right? So this is perhaps a difficult surgery to undertake, but we've got to try to reduce the influence of the globalist, Marxist, communist leftists, and at the same time take a stand for freedom and democracy. So you get a guy like Jackson Hinkle who starts saying, no, those two things are the same thing, that freedom and democracy are Marxism, are communism. You better be careful, because he is at the end of the road that many people in the United States are walking down. People like Tucker Carlson, people like Candace Owens. Okay, those people are on that same path, and maybe they don't see the end yet, but I think we can see pretty clearly from what Jackson Hinkle did yesterday, that's the direction they're heading, and we got to be careful about that, folks. Okay, all right, so Chuck Freeman says, can we pray? Yes, we can. We can always pray. So let's say a prayer and we'll be done. Lord God, thank you so much for giving us a chance, just the technology to be able to come together and discuss these issues. That we know they're complex and thorny issues. We pray that you'd give our leaders wisdom to see evil for what it is, and to not be just diverted from trying to overcome evil with good. Lord, I pray that you'd help us to know how we personally can do that. Help us to pray for our leaders. Remind us to pray for our leaders, and pray for the prosperity of our allies, Lord. And I just pray that you would give us wisdom and discernment in our everyday lives, and help us to see you more clearly and love the people that we meet today. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, folks, on that note, it is Sunday morning, and I'm going to go find a church to go to, because no matter where I go on planet Earth, if I find a church that preaches the gospel of Jesus Christ, then I am with my family. So I'm going to go visit my family today here in Guam, and hope you have a chance to go to church tomorrow morning, wherever you are, whatever time it is, Sunday morning, wherever you are. So God bless you. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.